There
data
is a
point here shows a
particular
strong
kind of man who
correlation.
does
I
good
see, that
things
makes
without
sense.
any
Exactly. The metrics
architecture of
support our
motive
strategy.
behind
Great,
them.
let's use
No
this.
calculation, no anticipation of return, no quiet ledger running in the background tallying what generosity might eventually pay back. These men are rarer than they should be, and the world does not always make it easy to stay that way. Life has a habit of teaching people to protect what little they have, to weigh the cost of openness, to think twice before letting a stranger pass the threshold of the life they've worked so hard to hold together. Roy Callahan had every reason to think that way. He had a 9-year-old daughter depending on him entirely, a mortgage that required his full attention every single month, a truck with a transmission that was operating more on hope than mechanics, and a job as a line supervisor at a packaging plant in Columbus, Ohio that paid him enough to manage but never quite enough to rest. By every reasonable measure, Roy Callahan's life had no room in it for anyone new. And yet, it was his daughter Lily who noticed the girl first. They had been coming out of the laundromat on a Saturday morning in late September, Lily carrying the small bag of quarters like it was a responsibility of national importance, Roy with the laundry basket balanced against his hip, when Lily stopped walking and tugged the back of his jacket and pointed without saying anything. Across the parking lot, sitting on top of a large duffel bag beside a rusted exterior staircase that led to the second-floor apartment units above the nail salon, was a girl who looked to be about 20. She had a laptop open on her knees and was typing with focused intensity, headphones around her neck, a half-eaten granola bar beside her. She did not look distressed, exactly. She looked like someone who had made the best available situation out of a bad hand and was getting on with it. "Why is she sitting outside?" Lily asked. "Don't know, Bug. Are you going to ask?" Roy looked at his daughter. Lily had her mother's eyes and, it was increasingly clear, her mother's precise and gentle way of identifying the moments when her father needed to be better than his instincts. Dana had been gone for 3 years, a car accident on I-70 that Roy did not allow himself to think about in detail, and in the time since, Lily had quietly taken up the project of keeping her father's heart from sealing over completely. "Stay here," he said. Her name was Claire. Claire Weston, she said, junior at Ohio State, biochemistry major. She offered this information in the brief, economical way of someone accustomed to being asked to justify her existence in a space. She had been renting the apartment above the nail salon for 6 weeks, she explained, and had come home 3 days ago to a padlock she didn't recognize on her door and a number disconnected when she tried to call her landlord. She had filed a report. She had called the university's Student Resources Office, which had given her a list of shelters and a pamphlet. Her parents, she said, looking briefly at the parking lot asphalt rather than at Roy, were not available. Roy was quiet for a moment. He thought about his spare room, which currently functioned as a storage space for Lily's outgrown bikes and roughly 400 pieces of a train set he had always meant to assemble. He thought about his mortgage and his transmission and the calculation he ran every month in his head that left him somewhere between fine and not fine depending on variables he couldn't always control. He thought about every reasonable argument against what he was already, in some part of himself, deciding. Then he thought about a girl sitting on top of a duffel bag in a parking lot because her landlord had vanished and her parents were not available, and he thought about Lily watching him from across the asphalt, and he thought about Dana, who would have already had the girl in the car. "We have a spare room," he said. "It's not much, but it's a room." Claire looked at him the way people look at something they want very badly to trust but have learned, through specific experience, to be careful about trusting. "I can pay," she said immediately. "We can talk about that later." "Come on." She paid, as it turned out, $250 a month, which she produced in cash from an envelope in her duffel bag and which Roy accepted because he understood that a person's dignity sometimes requires that a kindness have the shape of a transaction. She was quiet in the way that guests are quiet when they are afraid of being too much, careful with the kitchen, precise about cleaning up after herself, gone most of the day either at the university or the library, returning in the evenings with her laptop and her textbooks and occasionally a grocery bag from which she cooked things that made the whole house smell extraordinary and then called both of them to the table as though feeding them were simply the reasonable thing to do. Lily adored her within a week. This was not a small thing. Lily was, by the assessment of her teachers and her father and anyone who had tried to rush past her careful evaluations of people, a child of considerable discernment. She did not give her approval easily or quickly. But she gave it to Claire, fully, freely, with the uncomplicated certainty of a child who recognizes something true when she encounters it. They did homework together at the kitchen table in the evenings, Lily with her multiplication tables and Claire with her biochemistry problem sets, and Roy would come in from the garage or the backyard and find them there under the overhead light and feel something move in his chest that he hadn't felt in 3 years. He never asked about her family. It was not his nature to probe, and something in Claire's posture on the subject told him the territory was painful, and he respected that the way he respected most things, by leaving it alone and being present in the ways that didn't require explanation. What he did not know, for the 3.5 months that Claire Weston lived in his spare room among Lily's outgrown bikes and the unassembled train set, was that her full name was Claire Weston Hargrove. That her father was Gerald Hargrove, whose name appeared on the sides of buildings in 7 states and whose net worth had been estimated in a financial magazine the previous year at somewhere north of $4 billion. That Claire had walked away from a family compound in Greenwich, Connecticut and a credit card with no practical limit and a life of constructed ease because she had needed, with a desperation she could not have explained to anyone who hadn't felt it, to find out who she was when none of those things were doing the work of defining her. She had not planned on Roy Callahan and his daughter and the kitchen table and the unassembled train set that they built together over 3 Saturday afternoons in November, all 3 of them on the living room floor with the instructions spread out and Lily in charge of the pieces under letter D through F. She did not tell them who she was when she left in January, moving into a university apartment with a roommate. She hugged Lily for a long time at the door and told her she was the smartest person she knew, and Lily said she knew, and Roy laughed for the first time in what felt like months. Claire shook his hand and then, because a handshake was absurd given the preceding months, hugged him too, briefly, the way you hug someone when the feelings are large and the words are not cooperating. The letter came in March. It was addressed to Roy, handwritten on plain paper with no letterhead, and it was from Claire, and it said what she had not been able to say standing in his doorway in January. It said who she was. It said what these months had meant. It said that she had told her father about a man in Columbus who had offered a stranger a spare room and asked for nothing except the $250 she had insisted on paying, and that her father had asked if he could do something, and that she hoped Roy would allow it. The truck's transmission was repaired the following week by a mechanic who said only that it had been taken care of. The mortgage company sent a letter in April confirming that the remaining balance had been settled in full by an anonymous third-party payment they were not at liberty to discuss further. Roy sat at his kitchen table with that letter for a long time. Then he called Lily in from the backyard and read it to her and watched her face move through surprise and recognition and the particular satisfaction of a 9-year-old who has understood something important before the adults around her. She nodded slowly, the way she nodded when things confirmed what she had already suspected. I knew she was good, Lily said simply. Roy folded the letter carefully and set it down and looked at his daughter, who had her mother's eyes and her mother's instincts and had dragged him across a parking lot one September morning to ask a girl why she was sitting outside. He thought about the train set in the living room, still assembled, because none of them had wanted to take it apart. He thought about the kitchen table under the overhead light and the extraordinary smell of the things Claire had cooked and the way a house that had been very quiet for 3 years had, for a few months, been full. Me too, Bug, he said. Me too.